Thank you. How have women fared in the American experiment of democracy? And how can we elevate their voices? That was in June. As the political season unfolded and women's rights became more politicized, more divisive, I found myself growing frustrated. That quickly moved to anger. And then by the end of it, I was just heartbroken. And I realized that those weren't really productive emotions. So I thought maybe I could use this as an opportunity to move from frustration to action. Not only talk about the progression and regression of women in America, but sparking a conversation about building bridges. How could we communicate more productively, support each other more authentically, and work to lift each other up instead of tear each other down? Doesn't that sound good?
Yeah.
Right? So I need to tell you, I'm not an academic. I don't hold a degree in gender studies, but I've had the privilege for over 20 years to lead a women's organization that work with women as they're building economic security for their families. I've seen firsthand the barriers they face, and I've fought alongside them as an advocate for change. And as I go through this talk, I'm going to have the wise words of a good friend of mine, and we're going to bring the light and not the heat to this conversation. So we're going to set the stage with the journey of women in America. 45 minutes, we'll whip right through this. So starting in colonial America, so women's rights were really tied to their fathers first and then their husbands. To today, we've walked through waves of change. The first wave of feminism was actually in the mid-1800s with the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, which was the first time women stepped out of the home to advocate for rights, including the right to vote. A mere 70 years later, that right was realized in 1920 when the 19th Amendment was ratified. But not for all women. Poll taxes, lack of education really kept people in poverty, especially women of color, from fully accessing that right for another couple of decades, but I feel like that deserves its own talk. So, then came the second wave of feminism, the 60s and 70s, reproductive rights, workplace discrimination, pay equity, and really transformative policies like Title IX, where that's a law ensuring that women have access to sports and education. And I don't know if we have anybody old enough, mature enough to remember when women could get credit on their own for the first time. Can you imagine? I feel like we've got hands. So we can imagine. And that brought us to the 1990s, where the third wave of feminism tackled issues like power dynamics, sexual harassment, through movements like Me Too. So with all of this progress, we are set and all of the issues are solved, right? So here we are today, and we're still struggling. Reproductive rights and pay equity still remain at the forefront of the women's rights movement. Why? Why, for the first time last year, did the gender equity gap for pay increase for the first time in 2 decades? Why are women still overrepresented in the struggling population across the board? I want to share some realities about the household dynamics. We live in a beautiful space. We have great beaches. We're in this beautiful cultural center. We have a vibrant arts and culture community. We have opportunity. But if I asked you to think of how many households struggle in our community, and some people can't answer because you work in this space, but I want you to think about it. Would you be surprised to know that 40% of our households don't earn enough money to cover their basic living expenses? And women are overrepresented in the population that's struggling. 69%. 69% of female-headed households don't earn enough money to cover their basic living expenses. This is compared to 39% of male-headed households and 19% of married or dual income. So, is it just a local issue? No, it's a national trend. Women are overrepresented in poverty across the board. The Census Bureau released a report last year on wealth in households. Dual or married households have 3.5 times more wealth than male-headed households. Do we even want to guess what the number is for single female? 5.5 times. So, what is this data telling us? I don't believe that women are any less equipped to succeed than men. I think that business owners I know don't choose to pay women less than others. I think what it's telling us is there are structural inequities and systemic barriers that serve as a barrier to women's success and economic security. And economic security, my friends, that's the key. That's the foundation to a life rooted in stability and independence. So, I want to talk about a structural inequity. The fun is about to begin. So, the caregiving economy. Just by show of hands, who's familiar with the caregiving economy? All right, I always like it when there's a few hands because that I get to share knowledge. So the caregiving economy, quite simply, is work done unpaid or uncompensated, caring for children, elderly parents, or other family members. In the US, 2/3 of caregivers in the caregiving economy are women. Anybody surprised by that statistic? So, why does this matter? When you think of people who are participating in the caregiving economy, think about their work opportunities. We had 2 clients last week that were meeting with a career coach to say, I've got to get a different work arrangement because I've got to be able to be home at these times, da-da-da-da-da. So that keeps them from taking higher paying job opportunities, moving up the career ladder, and they're also absent from leadership. So the policies and systems that are being talked about don't have those voices. And when the voices or the impact of the caregiving economy is not part of the conversation, there's never any changes or policies to address those systems, and the cycle perpetuates. And it's a really frustrating cycle. For far too long, the policies that our society is built around, whether it's our institutions, our cultural norms, have not been designed with women's needs in mind. And what does that mean? This is my favorite line, and I might say it twice. When women's voices are absent from decision-making spaces, the policies that shape our lives fail to reflect the full diversity of needs within our community. I'm doing one more time, right? When women's voices are not in decision-making spaces, the policies that shape our lives fail to reflect the full diversity of needs in our communities. And it's not just about the systems. They're really important. It's also about our conversations, our biases, how we hear certain words. Feminist, feminism. 20 plus years ago, I was fairly new in my role. A donor said to me, "Don't use empowerment too much. It might seem too feminist." And I remember thinking, women's organization, kind of odd. And obviously it stuck with me because 20 years later I'm talking about it. But to me, feminism is about fairness. It's about opportunity. It's about respect for all of us. It's not about competition, it's about collaboration. And I love the word collaboration, and I think you're gonna hear it a lot. But when we work toward creating a more equitable society, everybody wins. Families, communities, economies. When women thrive, families thrive. When families thrive, communities flourish. So I propose we have the opportunity to change the conversation. We need to be willing to have open, honest conversations to tackle these really big issues. And we need to do it without blame, but in the power of collaboration. I want to share a story of how the power of collaboration changed a systemic barrier. How many of you are so excited to talk about systemic barriers and structural inequities on a Saturday afternoon? So, right, I have my people in the back clapping. So, in the state of Florida, there is something called the benefits cliff. Again, show of hands, who's familiar with benefits cliff? So, benefits cliff is when somebody's working, but they're receiving a government subsidy. Think childcare subsidy, housing subsidy, and an increase in earnings can knock them off the system. Many working women take advantage of childcare subsidies. Childcare is the number 2 expense in a household budget. It is really expensive. So, a nominal increase in raise, we had a client, 10 cents an hour. So when I say nominal, I mean nominal. Knocked her out of the system, so then she had to make a decision. Do I quit work? Do I not let my child have safe quality childcare? What kind of option is that for somebody? And it's a situation where everybody loses. The woman loses, the family loses, and the employer loses. And as a society, we lose because we still have somebody on the benefit system. So in our region, and it was both Manatee and Sarasota County, we built a bipartisan collaboration and advocated for change to this system. 2022, bipartisan can work. A bipartisan bill was passed by the Florida legislature called the Economic Self-Sufficiency Bill, giving people a chance to address the benefits cliff. It's just a really great example about the power of collaboration and how it can work to create systems that empower, because I'm still using that word, instead of impede. So part of our issue is representation. Studies show that countries with higher rates of female representations has stronger policies around parental leave, childcare, gender-based violence, but in the US, only 28% of our Congress are women and 32% of state and elected officials. So good news, we have room for growth. So, and it's not just women. I don't want to say, because I think we can all think of one or two women that might not represent our ideals, but it's for allies who prioritize policies that support women and families. So there's the opportunity to get more engaged with that. So as we're looking at what our next steps are, and as I close, I want to leave you with this. Elevating women's voices isn't just a task for women. It's for all of us. Because when women are engaged in the civic process, it's a powerful tool for change. I think that we sometimes get intimidated by what does it look like to be engaged civically. It can be simple. It can start with a conversation. Be willing to listen. Be willing to learn. Be able to share your perspective, because if people don't understand the realities of some of the struggles, they don't know that something needs to be changed. Engage in conversations with people that disagree with you. I know, super hard, but really important. Get involved in civic engagement. Go to a county commission meeting, a school board meeting. Who knows? Somebody in here might run for office. That's really civically engaged. Easiest thing you can do, vote. But if you're going to vote, you need to educate yourself. Access resources, and there are many, to help break down the complexity of the policies and the laws. I don't know if you've ever tried to read them. They're a little overwhelming. They're very dense. I feel like they get paid by the word to write them. But once we break it down and really understand how it impacts our lives, our workplaces, healthcare, schools, then we know who we want to advocate for, the systems we need changed, and it really has the opportunity to uplift us all. So I propose we will change the conversation from us versus them and see this as an opportunity to work collaboratively, to listen, to learn, and to act, and to create a society where women's voices and all voices aren't just heard, but celebrated. We have the opportunity to create a society where equity isn't just an ideal, but a reality. And most importantly, create a democracy that works for all. Thank you.